Hi everyone, my name is Grace Cisna. I'm the CPA on staff here at ProjectionHub, and today I wanted to take a little time to walk you through our bar Excel template. Just like all of our Excel templates at ProjectionHub, the bar template is set up with some input tabs at the start, these tabs in light blue, and then the output tabs in green here, as well as one more output tab, this orange tab here called the Investor Dashboard. Now on all of these tabs that are in this light blue color, you will find cells in that same light blue color. And in those cells is where you're going to be inputting your data so that the financial statements will be populated with the data that you enter. I wanted to point out before we dive in that if you download one of our Excel templates and it doesn't quite work for you, please reach out to us. We can modify these templates or help you fill them out. I'm the one that's developed them and you'll be contacting me. So don't hesitate to reach out if you need help or you need some modifications. So a little bit about our bar template. Just like all of our templates, it starts with this input assumptions tab where you enter some key assumptions as well as your balance sheet assumptions. So company name, projection start date, some AR and inventory assumptions, as well as investment amounts, loan amounts, and fixed asset amounts. So note that our template is going to be doing all of the background calculations for you. All you have to do is enter this data here, and we're going to be calculating things like loan interest expense and depreciation expense for you, so you don't have to worry about figuring out how to calculate that for your financial statements. The next tab is the input revenue and cost of sales tab. So this is the biggest input tab, and this is going to help you predict your bar's revenue as well as the cost of sales, which includes your direct labor and your direct materials or the alcohol that's going into drinks. So we do this by calculating out the number of seats in your bar, the number of days open per week, and then we project revenue based on a percentage of capacity filled in your bar at any given time. So we do this to avoid over-predicting revenue because we know that you're limited to a certain capacity in your bar, and therefore you can't, earn more revenue than you have in capacity. So we've got two different categories here. We have peak hours and then other hours because the way that your customers behave during these hours might be different. So during peak hours, we could say the average visit is a certain number of minutes. We can define the number of peak hours per day. Right here it's set at 5. And then we start with a percentage of capacity filled, and note that that grows over time. And so then if the bar is filled to that percentage of capacity, the model will predict your monthly customers for you, and then you can enter the average spend per person, which can grow over time to get peak hours revenue. And we repeat that process for the other hours revenue as well, and we combine the two to get total bar revenue down here. So after revenue, we're going to calculate the total cost of sales. Now this is calculating wholly on its own based on the information you provide at the top here. So at the top, you're going to be providing information about servers, bartenders, hosts and hostesses, and other employees. So these would be the direct employees, direct labor. And then we also calculated in some closing and opening hours for every day and the number of days open per week. And once you provide all that information, including their hourly rates and how many of them you have for every hour that you're open, the model is going to calculate the cost of sales for you based on the direct materials and the direct labor. Note this cost of product is coming from this row, or sorry, this cell here. The product cost has a certain percentage of revenue. So once you have your input revenue and cost of sales filled out, we can move on to other expenses. Other expenses are those operating expenses, not including the direct expenses and not including salaries, which we're going to calculate on the next tab. So you can enter your direct expenses here. Sorry, not direct expenses, your operating expenses here. We provide a couple ways to calculate those, the first of which is a fixed expense. So this means you're going to be spending a flat amount every month. And we break these down into the first 3 months and then yearly amounts after that. So you're able to set the individual expenses for months 1, 2, and 3 separately. And that enables you to determine startup costs, any legal startup costs or other costs associated with starting. Those things that only happen in the first couple months, you can enter here. That way they don't get extrapolated to all of the data. And then months 4 through 12, these are the monthly amounts that you're entering here. And they'll go in this column, and then the monthly amounts for years 2 through 5, and it's just going to use the same amount for every month. That way you don't have to plug in the individual expenses for all 60 months of the model. It's making it a little easier for you. You only have to plug in however many columns this is here. So that's the fixed amount. Another way you can calculate expenses is as a percentage of revenue. So, for example, credit card fees is a percentage of revenue. So you'll be paying the credit card companies a certain percentage based on sales. And in this case, we're doing it based on a percentage of total revenue. Your other options would be percentage of, in this case, bar revenue, which would be your total revenue because there's only one revenue stream for this template. In some of our other templates, there's multiple revenue lines, and therefore you can determine the percentage. The cost is a percentage of different types of revenue. Another thing to keep in mind is when you do a percentage of revenue, make sure you're putting it in this decimal format. This here is representing 2%, 0.02. If you just typed 2 in here, that's going to think you mean 200%. So if you do get to your income statement and see that this expense, any of your expenses look much larger than they should, come back here and check this column and then check to make sure if you are using a percentage of revenue that you're using the decimal format for percentages. Our last input tab is the input salaries and owner draw tab. Owner draw can also be called dividends, depending on how you want to phrase it. So here you can enter any salaried employees. In this case, we have a manager that's in here as an example. So you can enter their job title, their annual salary, any employer taxes and benefits, their starting month, ending month, just in case you plan to, switch up hiring in the middle here. And then number of particular employees, so you can enter duplicate or triplicate employees by just changing that number there. Maybe you have 10 managers, whatever you'd like, you can enter it here. And then we also allow for an annual raise percentage. As far as the owner draw or dividends, if you plan to be paying out dividends or making owner draws, you can enter those in the appropriate month here. And we also provide a reference line for cash at the end of the month before owner draw. That way you know how much cash you have on hand available for dividends or an owner draw. So that's all the input tabs. Let's jump into the output tabs. On the at a glance tab, we have some key ratios and graphs and charts that will be helpful for you. These are easy to be pulled out and put into a pitch deck. So we've got a break-even analysis here, profit and loss as a glance, some pretty pie charts below. So those are mostly for your pitch deck and for your reference as well. The next 3 tabs are the income statement summary. So the income statement, the cash flow statement, and the balance sheet in summary format, meaning they show the ends of the years for 5 years. You can see you've got your revenue, cost of goods sold, your operating expenses, income tax, and then your net income down here, as well as your EBITDA, which is your earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. Cash flow statement is really similar. We've got a couple items that don't show up on the income statement, including cash from loans and investments and cash paid on loan principal. Then the balance sheet here showing your assets, your liabilities, and your shareholders' equity. Note our balance sheets are always going to balance. That's one of the most time-consuming things of building projections on your own is getting your balance sheet to balance. But ours are ready to go and balanced, and they're doing all those calculations for you, so you don't have to worry about them being unbalanced. After that, we have these same financial statements, but broken out into monthly formats. So every single month for all 5 years. The income statement, the statement of cash flows, and the balance sheet. So these are all ready to go in a format to give to your bank or to your investors or just for your own personal reference. Our last tab is a new addition, the investor dashboard. These are new to all of our version 2 templates. And what the investor dashboard enables you to do is to change some major assumptions of the model. And what that's going to do is change the assumptions for this modified income statement below, but it's not going to change anything throughout the rest of the model. So this is great if you're trying to model different scenarios. It also works well if you're showing this to an investor and they can sort of play with the assumptions of the model and see how that affects your income statement without it changing the original income statement. So once they change some of the assumptions, like the number of seats in the bar, hours open per day, some of your product costs and labor costs, as well as your other expenses. Once they change those or you change those, you can come down and see the original income statement and your modified income statement. So that is a brief overview of our bar template. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at support@projectionhub.com. Again, if you need modifications or you have questions or need help filling out the template, please reach out to us and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.